On a bright, sunny day in Yokohama, Japan in the year 2014, Satu nieceh stands inside a bank. He's on the phone with Murasaki, his partner from work. Nieceh is genuinely confused when Murasaki tells him that an ATM cannot withdraw his 430 yen. Meanwhile, everyone at the bank is taking cover. Nieceh finally grasps the situation when one of the robbers fires in his direction. Gasuke and Inspector Art from the police department arrive on the scene as the robbers are taken into their custody. Art thanks one of the officers, but the latter relays that the job was already taken care of by Nieceh. The said man later runs through the doors of Cafe Nowhere, asking the owner, named Master, if they have any new assignments. Turns out, they have a long table as a makeshift office inside the cafe, and are private investigators called Hamatora. Birthday from their handyman duo joins them and starts teasing Nieceh on his 430 yen. Ratio, who happens to be Birthday's partner in their line of work and a doctor as well, is also present at the cafe. Koneko, their negotiator of contracts and receptionist, with a mysterious cat tail, walks inside, telling them that they've got 2 new assignments. The first one is about capturing a suspect of serial kidnapping of college girls. The second one is a request from the Toyosaki family in Yamate, Yokohama, about a safe belonging to the master of the family, who has recently passed away and no one else knows how to open it. It's concerning because someone is attempting to steal it. The Hamatora are tasked to capture the kidnapper and guard the safe. Meanwhile, Roshio and Birthday leave on an assignment. They are on bodyguard duty for a girl who is apparently not supposed to know some information. It is said that the one who is about to steal the safe is a minimum holder, slang for someone with a paranormal ability beyond human capacity, which is only applicable when a specific gesture is done to activate it, aka a minimum. The reward for the first job is 100,000 yen, while 1 million yen for the second one. Murasaki wants them to take the latter as it pays more, but Nieceh argues that it's not about the money. Murasaki takes the form for the second job and leaves, but not before reminding Nieceh that this is exactly why the latter is always poor. They both end up going in opposite directions for the different tasks. Upon reaching Continental Women's College, Nieceh asks some students about the kidnapping of Miki, if they know anything about her being targeted by someone, but the girls don't bother to give him any straight answers. Though they do mention her quitting a part-time job, Shinji Toyosaki, the son of the Toyosaki family, shows Murasaki the safe. There, the latter is informed that the safe cannot be opened unless the proper steps are taken. Otherwise, the items inside it will catch fire. Nieceh visits his informant Mao. He tells the latter that so far the kidnapping of 7 girls have one thing in common. Mao already knows that it's the fact that none of them were tight on money. Nieceh gives him 30 yen, requesting for more information. Mao gets angry at the amount. He claims that his information is worth more than just 30 yen. Art shows up with 30,000 yen in his hand, saving Nieceh the embarrassment of begging for more information. The inspector enlightens Nieceh on the matter, telling him that the police department happens to be the client for the case because they just can't seem to catch the kidnapper and require a little help. So far, Nieceh has the information about a gang overheard by a witness discussing how many more girls they need to kidnap before they get the correct information. His mind goes straight to when Koneko told them earlier that the girl whom Ratio and Birthday are guarding knows something she shouldn't. The duo is in the car parked in front of the girl's place. Birthday goes on and on about Columbus and his egg. He gets interrupted by Niece's call, asking if the girl happens to be a college student. Birthday tells him that she was already at the bank earlier working as an intern when the robbery took place, calling it hilarious. Her name is Azusa, and is also a student of Continental Women's College. Suddenly, the car is lifted and gets hurled at the building. A minimum holder stands behind it. He activates his minimum by blowing a bubblegum and throws a boulder inside the girl's room. The man climbs up there. Scared, she tells him the code 2A5678BXE. He's about to kidnap her but gets stopped by Birthday's lightning minimum. He has the ability to electrocute people by biting a taser. The kidnapper counterattacks by throwing giant boulders at him and escapes. Nieceh reaches there as the kidnapper zooms past him. Ratio sits on the ground lamenting the destruction of his brand new car. The kidnapper informs someone on the phone about the code, and the next target being the Toyosaki mansion. Murasaki is in the dead master's room. He picks a book titled Somnambulism aka Sleepwalking. He consults Ratio on it because the guy is a doctor. Azusa is brought to the cafe. She is shaken from the attack. Hajime shares her food with her to make her feel better, which isn't an everyday occurrence. Birthday even jokes about hamburgers raining the next day. Nieceh asks what the kidnapper had wanted from Azusa. She replies that it was a number which she doesn't even know anything about, and only overheard Mr. Toyosaki mumbled it in his sleep. Nieceh puts 2 and 2 together and snatches the phone from Ratio. He informs Murasaki that both of their cases are connected. He leaves with Birthday and Ratio to meet Murasaki at the mansion. The latter explains the situation to the son and the housekeeper, informing them that the late master was sleeping around with college girls. One of them happened to be Azusa. The kidnappers got to know about Mr. Toyosaki's sleepwalking, most likely through his doctor, which is why they were kidnapping all the girls that the man had slept with, hoping that one of them could have heard him mention the code of the safe in his sleep. Sure enough, Azusa had heard him and had written the number. Afterwards, she had realized that she was most likely in danger and had requested for bodyguards. When Murasaki is done explaining, the son starts to freak out. He can't comprehend the fact that his whole life his father had always been strict with him, yet the old man had been sleeping with college girls. Suddenly, Murasaki dives towards them, saving them from a boulder. The kidnapper from earlier has arrived. He boasts about having a gravity minimum, which enables him to pick up anything, making it weightless in his mind. Murasaki cracks a joke about getting him a job as a mover. The man throws heavy statues at him, but Murasaki takes him by surprise with his power minimum. The other robbers realize that they have to fight against a minimum holder. Ratio and Birthday show up from behind. The latter fries them. Ratio then attacks them by removing his eye patch, which activates his perspective minimum. He has the ability to see the weak points in a person's body and hits those areas with brass gloves. The men end up getting beaten badly. Outside, nieceh joins them as well. Upon seeing the pair, the kidnapper figures out that they are the Hamatora private investigators. nieceh puts on his headphones, punching the man with super speed. His sonic minimum helps him travel through the speed of sound. He can only use his ability if he puts on his headphones, helping him navigate the wavelength and then snaps his fingers. Afterwards, the safe is opened, and to everyone's disappointment, it contains heaps of adult content. The thief gets arrested. Art is also present at the scene. He tells Gasuke that it's about time they enlighten the Hamatora investigators about the serial murderer who is only after minimum holders. The next day, Birthday is out, performing some magic trick for random bystanders, but it goes wrong. An explosion coincides with his trick, because of which he ends up in police custody. At Cafe Nowhere, two kids, Theo and Ray, arrive, asking for Hamatora. Murasaki is hesitant about getting a job from some kids, but nieceh reminds him that they need it to make more money. The kids tell them that their art teacher named Mr. Kitazawa has been absent from school and doesn't even seem to be at home. Murasaki dismisses it by saying that the man is probably playing a game. The kids tell them that they don't believe him to be that type of a person, and the police refuse to help as it's not a murder case. While Murasaki contemplates, nieceh agrees to help find the man. The investigator duo ends up going to their school. Murasaki is a teacher and nieceh is a student. One of the students is helping the so-called teacher set up the internet system. Murasaki then asks her about the app she has created for the students of Yokohama Bain High School, called the Reverse Site. She gets flustered because it was supposed to be kept a secret from the teachers. Later, while going through the app, the investigators stumble upon a page where Theo is getting bullied. nieceh confronts him about it. The kid confesses that he has thought about taking his own life way too many times. He couldn't share his struggle with his family because the bullies had threatened to hurt Ray. Mr. Kitazawa was considerate enough to reach out to him. nieceh cuts him off by stating that he couldn't have possibly thought of relying on the man for the rest of his life. Murasaki interrupts them. He takes nieceh to a murder site. Art shows them the face of the victim. It turns out to be Mr. Kitazawa. Art explains that he is a victim of a psycho serial killer, the evidence being that his brain has been removed like the previous victims. They all were minimum holders. 6 places have been bombed so far, and the police still haven't caught the bomber. Ray cries her eyes out during the funeral. Murasaki and nieceh attended as well. Afterwards, in the car, nieceh shows him Kitazawa's phone, which he obviously stole from the crime scene. nieceh wants to dig through it for more info for Theo's sake. nieceh believes that the kid needs to know the truth. The scene switches to the past, where Theo is being bullied by 5 kids. Kitazawa had produced the said pictures to the school board, which led to the suspension of those bullies. They happen to be the same users from the online page as well, but the problem with the photo is that it already contains the 5 kids, which then raises the question, who actually took the photo? Upon further digging, the IP address leads back to Kitazawa's home. His home computer contained the history of the postings. Theo is in disbelief because the teacher was the only person who had helped him. nieceh brings forth even more evidence. He shows them another site that the man frequently posted on. The page was known as Pleasure from Others' Misfortune. The bullies had posted the photo to the site as if they had performed a heroic act. The worst part being that Kitazawa had the ability to create photographic types of drawings, known as the realism minimum. He was thrilled to post the realistic photos to the app, so that Theo could get trolled even further, making him an outcast. He then took those fake pictures to the school board in order to improve his own reputation. Theo starts throwing up after Niece is done unraveling the truth. At night, while looking at those fake bullying pictures, Birthday notices that they are all the places where the 6 bombs have taken place, and the only one remaining is the 7th photo, pictured at the school. Coincidentally, Theo takes Rei to school to check on something related to Kitazawa, but they are met with the sight of a timer bomb. They spot one of the bullies called Kojima on the rooftop. He blames Theo for ruining his life, saying that he only followed what the rest were doing and now the photos will forever remain on the internet, which is why he is going to erase the whole of reality by bombing the place. Nice also makes it to school. Kojima starts speeding up the timer on the bomb, revealing that he has time acceleration minimum, turning bombs into grenades. Nice points out that he might as well have used a grenade. The investigator takes the bomb and starts running as the time shortens to a few seconds. He bumps into a long, white-haired person. Murasaki quickly snatches the bomb, activating his ability and tossing it towards the sky. It explodes right after. The kid shows them bombs attached to his waist. Murasaki climbs a vent leading towards the rooftop. He breaks the stopwatch and sends the kid flying with a hard punch. Afterwards, at the funeral hall, Niece gives Theo a baseball bat to vent out his disappointment. The kid gladly takes it and smashes the dead man's photo frame and table. Meanwhile, Art gets the report of there being a non-innate minimum holder, which means that the person has acquired their ability rather than it being innate. Art asks if that is even possible. The man informs him that it can be achieved if the brain of the actual minimum holder is used. The scene switches to Morale, a professor at a minimum holders academy called Facultas Academy. He has collected a wide number of brains by murdering minimum holders. He menacingly laughs as he stands there admiring them. Gasuke and Art discuss the non-innate minimum holder. Art is just glad that they at least know about the motive of that psycho taking the victim's brains. Gasuke believes that if such a thing as giving someone a minimum does exist, that it sure would feel like a dream come true. Art doesn't agree with him, even though he himself doesn't have a minimum. At Cafe Nowhere, a woman named Naoko Itu from the Association for the Protection, Health and Equality of Youth Board of Directors meets the private investigators, wanting for them to investigate Facultas Academy. She already knows that it's an institute which brings out the abilities in kids that have a possibility of having a minimum. They put the kids through training, and if they pass it, then they're given the title of minimum holders. Graduating from the academy gives them a free pass into becoming high-level government officials. This means that they are already set to have a successful life. Murasaki points out that she sure knows a lot about the academy, even though the information is supposed to be a secret. Ito clarifies that they have members of the House and other government officials in their association who can easily get such sort of information. Her goal is for them to investigate not the school itself, but the scandals. Her argument is that it isn't fair for the rest of the normal students because minimums give the minimum holders an advantage. Children should be treated equally, and their future shouldn't be decided on whether they have abilities or not. Itu is also aware of the fact that government officials were involved in the foundation of the academy, so they can't directly call out the school. However, by unveiling their scandals, the school can be shut down. Itu then tells them that she has done some digging on the two, and has found out that even though they themselves are graduates of the academy, they hate it. Nice denies the allegation. She proceeds to take out a check of 1 million yen from her purse, claiming that it's only the advance payment and will be later on tripled as a contingency fee. Kaneko swoops in, accepting the check, and reminding Niece that he is far behind on his cafe bill as well as the rent. After the meeting, Naoko is in the car. She keeps ringing her son, Takahiro, but he isn't picking her call. The mother is worried because he hasn't been home for more than a day now. Gasuke goes through the extensive data on the work the association has done over the years. It includes recognition of harmful books for children's development, regulation on the explicit scenes in mangas and animes, and a list of the purchase and transfer of drugs. One of them stands out because it happens to be nieceh, which was transferred to the Genetic Research Institute. Upon hearing the name, Art already knows whom to discuss it with. He holds a meeting with Morale and informs the latter that he found nieceh in a male suspect's nervous system. The drug isn't available in the country and has been ordered from abroad by the association for someone. It can be assumed that it was for the professor. The latter agrees with the statement. Art then proceeds to say that when he inquired at the association, they claimed no part in the purchase and transfer of the drug. Professor Morale informs him that he had acquired the drug on the judgment of a specific member of the association. Art then inquires about the sort of study the professor is doing that requires the use of nieceh. Without hesitation, the professor informs him that he is doing research on non-innate minimum holders, though the study is yet to be completed, and even if there is a non-innate minimum holder in the town, he claims no connection to them, unless proven otherwise. Morale goes on to explain in detail that he is conducting the study for the sake of equality. He wants to mend the gap between the minimum holders and non-holders by giving them equal powers. Art calls it a selfish sense of values. Morale then goes on to glorify murderers. He says that those who are capable of killing are stronger than the rest of the people. The act of murder is hated because weak people exist, who obviously have the lack of power and cannot step forward. They then feel jealous of the strangers who have stepped out of the frame called society. According to him, with equal power, the society could turn into one where everyone steps forward, which will ultimately lead to the progression of the world. Art can't stand listening to his twisted philosophy and excuse himself. But Morale hits a nerve by stating that Art will be one of those people he would be saving because the man doesn't have any minimum. He then goes on to talk about how Art had taken admission into the academy with hopes of finding his own minimum, but he couldn't generate one and graduated with a brilliant mind as a talented human resource. Moral teases that the inspector must have wondered at times why his friends hold a minimum, but he doesn't. Art starts to sweat and his breathing becomes more erratic, but Morale doesn't stop there. He then talks about how the man must have felt jealous and wanted a minimum for himself, so much so that he could kill. The inspector grits his teeth and grabs him by the collar as his body shakes with anger. Meanwhile, Itu is busy giving her speech to the public when a manhole bursts open. Art's phone starts to ring, informing him about the commotion. A huge monster-like individual climbs out of the manhole. Itu doesn't waste her time calling Murasaki, desperation in her tone as she tells him that Facultas Academy is responsible, and it doesn't matter even if the truth is stretched, that Academy is probably making monsters. Murasaki understands that she'd rather create a scandal even if it doesn't exist. He steps in front of the monster as it throws a sign pole at him. Murasaki stops it with his minimum and gives him a few smacks with it. He asks for niece's help, but the latter would rather watch things go down. Nakao yells for them to capture the beast for proof before the police get their hands on it. As the monster looks at the woman, it utters the word mother. It hits her like a ton of bricks that who she keeps calling a monster is her own son Takahiro. He escapes from the police and jumps into another manhole. Art is on the scene as he receives a call from Morale, mischievously informing him about a middle schooler who had consulted Morale the previous day. The kid was ignored for not having any abilities, and Morale felt really sorry for him. He proceeds to put the blame on the kid as he says that an accident took place because Takahiro's aptitude was too low, that he skipped past the superpower phase and transformed into a monster instead. Art is angered once again after hearing his confession and promises to arrest him later. The mother is in the car crying and says that she felt bad for her son not being a minimum holder and had been counseling him all this time, keeping him safe from anything harmful. Nice interrupts her by saying that she literally called her son weak and tried to get rid of the ones considered stronger than him. There is nothing worse than your own parents not having faith in you. Murasaki tells him to just stop with it. Art figures out that Takahiro's sight has become very sensitive, which is why he is using sewers, but is also seeking human voices. They devise a trap for him by bringing out speakers and playing voices on it. Takahiro easily falls for it. They trap him with a net, but he pulls it away with force, throwing a police speaker in their direction, injuring Art. Nice steps forward. He recognizes that the kid just wants to prove that he is better than an innate minimum holder. Nice activates his minimum and starts hitting Takahiro, punching and kicking him to the ground. Morale sets his facility on fire, talking about how Nice's identity has been kept a secret for being ranked as the #1 minimum holder and needs to be surpassed. The police shout at Nice to end Takahiro's life, but Nice chooses not to and calls him cool. All Takahiro can do is cry in pain as blood trickles from his mouth. Itu sits in her chair looking drained as her assistant rings Morale, telling him that all he wanted was for the woman and the kid to be happy, which is why they had sponsored him. Morale malevolently tells him that they got their wish granted. The man lets him know that they won't be funding him anymore and cuts the call. Morale knows other people to sponsor his work because he just can't stop now. He wants to save Nice. Art rings up Honey, also a minimum holder, but she doesn't pick up the phone. She is busy locking in a target. Her partner, 3, keeps looking at their target with his binoculars. Honey waits for the right time to attack. The said target is about to shoot a politician, but the duo gets to him before he fires. 3 hits him hard with the gun. The man is surprised by the ambush. Honey relays that they were hired by his target, and she happens to have a minimum called the Mighty Script, which lets her see 10 minutes into the future. On the other hand, the Hamatoras are casted for an advertisement by a minimum agency, and Murasaki feels mortified by it. The advertisement has been ranked #2 in views. Nice asks about who the #1 ranked video belongs to. Kaneko shows him the video of a person who calls himself a player rather than an actor. His videos have taken over the internet. The duo is at the airport and Honey has received the wrong luggage bag with tons of totem poles in it. More than anything, she is concerned about her mighty. It is in her luggage. Art and Gasuke have arrested a 15-year-old who had pulled out an actual gun at a convenience store. Gasuke produces the pictures of numerous kids who have committed a crime with a gun in the past days. Apparently, an email had popped up in the kid's head. Upon opening the email, it contained the question about wanting to receive a gun. It got delivered to him. After that, he had to choose between joining an uprising or robbing a store, or else he would die. As they are searching for her things, Honey gets kidnapped by a bunch of men dressed in black. The car receives a sharp hit, making it swerve. Turns out 3 has climbed a car driven by a granny. 3 jumps on top of the car. He holds a Bible in his hands and starts to recite a prayer. By doing so, he's able to activate his minimum of super strength. He rips open the roof as Honey proudly watches from inside. The duo discovers gun parts inside the kidnappers' briefcases. Nice discusses the emails and guns case with Mao. He tells the latter the case is similar to that of Takahiro's because it involves someone giving the kids power and forcing them to do a task. Nice is of the opinion that both the cases are related. Mao compliments him on his intelligence, which contradicts his goofy appearance. Art tries to make his boss understand the seriousness of an uprising, but the man argues that they don't even know an exact location. Nice and Gasuke grab Art's attention. Nice relays that he has found something that all the arrested kids have in common. All these kids were heavy users of a video site. He opens the #1 ranked video. Upon a closer listen, a voice can be heard talking about the email and guns. When it's in high frequency, it's set to the decibel, which only kids under 15 years can hear. They are able to get information on the video uploader. The house isn't far away from their location. Inside the house, Morale is sitting on a couch while another man speaks for himself, saying that he wasn't told the info would be used for criminal acts. Morale belittles him, reminding him that he was the one who gave him all his power. He has a camera recording the man, but upon glancing at the camera screen, it looks like he has applied a sort of filter to it. The man declares that he is going to report it all to the police. He hardly takes a step forward and gets shot by Morale, dying instantly. Art and Nice are in the car when Art gets a call from Honey, asking if gun smuggling is happening in Yokohama. This takes Art by surprise. She fills him in, saying that they accidentally ended up getting involved. The duo goes inside a hotel room where one of the men is hiding. She successfully retrieves her mighty script. Art tells her to look 10 minutes into the future. Nice narrows the search down to leisure spots and shopping malls, calling it a hunch. She finds out that the uprising is going to happen in an amusement park called Cosmoland. Police are then sent to the area. The scene switches to Morale having murdered yet another person with a chainsaw. The scene changes back to the park. The police and the investigators are all there, collecting guns and disarming the kids who are firing in any and every direction. Art asks how Nice had figured out the general area of the target. The latter relays that this whole thing was a pleasure activity for the mastermind. Hajime wins 3-person tickets to a hot spring facility, and let's just say everyone is excited about it, especially Birthday. He keeps flirting with Honey. 3 is ready to tear him apart. The latter gets saved by a job assigned to him and Ratio. The Hamatora duo goes to meet their client, a lady named Mahawa who wants them to spy on her boyfriend named Arata Hasuda. She is suspicious of him having an affair with another woman, while there are already 4 men present at her place whom she refers to as boyfriends. Nice doesn't want to hear anymore and is about to leave when she informs them that all she wants is for them to investigate the man. He is a masseur at a hot spring facility. Upon hearing the phrase hot spring, helping her doesn't seem like a bad idea anymore. The females reach their destination. It's called the 10,000 Year Club. Hajima's eyes are fixed on the deluxe dinner coupon. They stumble upon Rei from the previous assignment. The girl explains that she and Theo had spent their money being Hamata's clients. They had to take part-time jobs at the facility. Nice and Murasaki have made it to the hot spring facility as well. The first person they come across is none other than Theo. 3 is also there, sitting in a massage chair, telling them to be quiet as he tries to relax himself. Meanwhile, the building gets stormed by men with guns, entering the women's changing room. To the females' surprise, the men aren't interested in them and tell them that female customers are free to leave. Though entering the men's changing room is a whole other story. Birthday is having a blast, sending the intruders into electric shock baths. The job that they were assigned is also at this facility. They get interrupted by Hasuda, calling them jokers. Hasuda takes off his shirt and starts doing sit-ups which are supposed to activate his minimum. His sweat appears, and it has the effect of hypnotizing men. It mixes with the steam, giving him an advantage of it spreading much quicker. The masseur calls it temptation minimum. Birthday doesn't believe it and goes near the man. As soon as the steam engulfs him, it affects him immediately. Ratio quickly jumps in to stop him from doing something he is going to regret. They all run out of the room, but the steam is everywhere inside the building. On the other hand, even though female customers are given the choice to leave the building, the girls are still inside. Apparently, their pride as females has been hurt from not being targeted by the men. However, Hajime is doing it for the sake of that deluxe dinner. The men have reached a part of the building where the steam hasn't reached yet. They have easily rounded up the intruders. Ratio mentions that in the midst of all the chaos, they lost sight of their target. He tells them that he and Birthday were supposed to guard the visiting prince of Abachahat, who currently happens to be inside the facility. However, Ratio and Birthday were tasked to secretly guard him. Hasuda finds the prince. He starts to hypnotize the prince with his temptation minimum. The girls fall through a vent and hit the floor. A locker opens from the impact, and a few Polaroids fall of a once famous pop star named Seiji Hijirikawa. He had to leave the industry after a huge scandal. Since he was so famous, everyone knew him, which made it hard to get another job, and the stress had led him to commit crime. Hasuda reveals that he has taken all the assets he had given Mahawa. The masseur has used them to execute his plan of holding the prince hostage because he knows that Abachahat has good relations with Japan. And if he makes the prince request the officials to get the star back on stage, then they surely won't be able to deny it. The men warn the females about the temptation charm, but it turns out that it only works on men. However, Hasuda floods them all with a slimy water solution, making them fall. The men that were tied up start to tackle them by sliding in that dirty water. Hasuda takes off with the prince. Hajime follows him by surfing on top of one of the men. Hasuda makes it to the rooftop with the prince. The police are already outside. He's about to jump off the building, but Hajime stops him from committing suicide. Hasuda gets arrested. The hypnosis is still not worn off from the prince. Nice thinks about how Hasuda isn't a minimum holder but still has a minimum, and wonders who could be behind all of this. On the other hand, a man explains to Gasuke that to create a minimum holder, the brain of a non-minimum holder is not required, which is obvious from the killing of the previous man. His brain was left intact. Though the killer is the same, what he doesn't understand is his motive behind it. Gasuke tells the man that he obviously can't understand because it's way above his intellect. Then something shocking happens. Gasuke stabs him from behind and wickedly laughs at the bleeding man. An illustrator named Chiyu gets live coverage for her amazing paintings as she's being photographed with a Hollywood director named George Makid. Ratio comes to check up on Birthday sitting in the hospital lobby. They watch Chiyu on the screen as the reporter talks about her synesthesia. Afterwards, she sits in a dressing room when a man comes from behind and drugs her. Chiyu's manager informs Birthday and Ratio that the kidnapper wants Chiyu to step down from the role she has been offered by director Makid, or else her life will be in danger. Birthday is already angry hearing how ridiculous it sounds. They can't even go to the police because Chiyu has already told the manager in advance that she doesn't want them getting involved. The manager assumes that she had foreseen her abduction and didn't want her kidnapper to be given any tough time, which is why she had told him ahead of time that if something like this did happen, the manager should contact Ratio and Birthday because they know her from Facultas Academy. Another murder has taken place in broad daylight right in front of a police station. The fact that he's a minimum holder, it doesn't come as a surprise that his brain is missing. This marks the 11th case so far. Honey inquires why Art doesn't want Nice knowing about morale. His reply is that the information can't be disclosed to the general public. She keeps insisting on wanting to know the reason. Art snaps at her. Gasuke reminds him that he is supposed to be having a day off, so that is what he should be doing instead of losing his composure. Art agrees and walks away. There's an illustrator's autograph session taking place, held by Miss Misty Greenroom. Birthday is also there, but he gives her Chiyu's artwork for signing. She shows her annoyance. He blatantly tells her that Chiyu was supposed to sit in her place. They take the discussion to the waiting room. They accuse her of kidnapping Chiyu. Ratio points out that other than Chiyu, Misty was the only illustrator with whom Makid could have collaborated. This could be a motive, and besides, according to Art, both the girls happen to be friends. No wonder Chiyu would want to protect the kidnapper. Misty is offended by their accusation. She bursts out saying that her sales are 5 times more than Chiyu's. Why would she want to kidnap her? Ratio points out that this may be true, but maybe working with the director was something she was looking forward to. She gets up to leave, but Birthday furiously slams his legs on the table, declaring that because their friend is missing, they will pay her as much she needs for her time taken. The scene switches to a graveyard. Nice and Art stand in front of the grave of Art's little brother. From the presents, it looks like their friends have already visited. Though a black cosmos flower sits in the corner, they aren't sure who has left it. At Cafe Nowhere, a celebrity makes an appearance. While Niece and the high schoolers keep fawning at him, he tells them that he has a job for Hamatora. Birthday steps out for a bit from the room, but gets smacked on the head with a pipe. Blood puddles on the ground, and his broken glasses lie next to it. Ratio instantly figures out that they belong to Birthday. He gets a call from an unknown caller telling him to bring Misty if he wants Birthday back. Ratio hears the sound of a parakeet on the call and knows exactly where to go. He reaches the building where Chiyu's manager had met them. There, a parakeet sits inside a cage. They stumble upon Misty's illustrations. They figure out that the kidnapper had wanted Misty and was going to frame Ratio and Chiyu as Misty's kidnappers, which would tarnish Chiyu's image, and the collaboration with May-Kid would end up going to Misty. She voices out her concern about the blood Birthday has lost on the ground. Ratio snaps at her, saying that he will live through it because he had promised Ratio that he won't die. A flashback begins. Little Ratio collected his ball from an old man. He could tell that the man was going to die soon, and sure enough, it happened. After that, people started to drift away from him, but Birthday wanted to talk to him. Birthday's body showed really strong signs of death, but he didn't want to believe it, and ended up betting that if he didn't die, then Ratio would have to die instead. Later, Birthday had undergone a major operation but survived. He assured Ratio that his prophetic version was dead because Birthday had lived. The latter had cried happy tears. Birthday wriggles his body towards an outlet and tears off the wires, resulting in an electrical explosion. Ratio gets the signal and swerves the car in that direction. Upon reaching there, Chiyu's manager jumps in between. Turns out he is the kidnapper. Ratio inquires why he wants Misty to do better than Chiyu. For the manager, it all boils down to money. Misty makes more than Chiyu. It doesn't matter to him what artistic skills Chiyu presents. The manager tears off his shirt, revealing that he possesses metal minimum. Ratio reveals his brass gloves. Ratio tries to fight him, but the manager arrogantly stands tall because attacking him is literally useless. Misty unties both Chiyu and Birthday. The latter runs to aid Ratio. He sends an electric shock through the floor, but it only gives the manager some static. Chiyu signals them to combine their minimums. They do exactly that, and the impact finally has some impact on him. However, he still manages to jump into a speedboat, but Murasaki and Niece reach there just in time. The former starts to spin an anchor chain, throwing it in the manager's direction. Nice grabs onto it and activates his minimum, which helps him land right on top of the speedboat. The manager gets knocked out cold from the impact. The job that the celebrity had mentioned earlier was about catching the manager, because his own manager had overheard the man scheming. The latter gains his consciousness and mutters about wasting the ability given to him. Nice gets alarmed by his words. The manager tells them that he was browsing when he stumbled upon a link, and suddenly his name popped up on the screen. After that, instructions bombarded the screen, promising him power if he fulfilled the task. He was afraid and had no other choice but to follow. Later on, out of nowhere, he ended up with his minimum. Nice informs Art about it and adds that there have been other cases of non-innate minimum holders. Art agrees. He goes on to say that the police have been taking testimonies from the arrested non-innate minimum holders. The way they have received their powers follow a similar pattern, though none of them have seen the person who gave it to them. Nice is able to figure out that morale is behind it. Art asks how. Nice answers that he had guessed that the person must have been very knowledgeable, which could only mean that he belonged to the minimum agency. Active researchers don't have any time on their hands, so Niece went ahead and narrowed down the list. He looked for a researcher who doesn't work at the agency anymore. Moral's name ended up being the right fit. Art is impressed by his deduction. Meanwhile, Morale has entered a heavily secured room full of brains inside giant tubes. He stands in front of one of them, praising its skills, saying that its ability is too vast to only be labelled as a minimum. He refers to it as the forbidden minimum holder. Art keeps making up the excuse for not letting Nice know anything related to the cases, claiming that the investigation is not supposed to be shared with civilians. Just then, the police station receives a call on a break-in. When they arrive at the scene, the preserved brain belonging to a forbidden minimum holder has been stolen. Nice mentions that because the brain has been stolen, then the case is most likely connected to the other crimes as well. Art orders his men to circulate Morale's picture through all the police stations. However, Nice disagrees with his order, because if Morale could escape from a heavily guarded place like this, then he probably has an impressive camouflage. By circulating the picture, the men will be bound to only search for the man in the picture, which will shorten their sight to watch out for the unexpected. Art yells at the man to mind his own business because this is a police case. He walks out the door, ordering his men to call 3 and Honey, as they are also working with the police. Art discusses the case with Honey and 3. She can't find anyone suspicious in a 10-mile radius on her mighty script, which can only mean that the suspect is using a disguise. Art mentions that the surveillance logs from the previous night have been deleted from the database. Honey adds that the system has a two-step verification, a fingerprint scan and a retinal scan, which means that the disguise used wasn't an ordinary one. Art doesn't know the ability of the minimum stolen, so that can't be of any help, but it must be something amazing. They then take a break. 3 calls Art for training. It is revealed that he had trained Art before because the man doesn't have any minimum and wanted to be at least physically strong. 3 reminds him that he has worked hard and is at his position as an inspector because he understands those who lack having a minimum. He needs to have faith in himself. Art displays great physical strength by throwing off 3. He thanks the latter for the session and drives away. Art goes back to the facility's premises just to make sure that nothing was left unnoticed. He finds Black Cosmos there, a few freshly plucked, and remembers finding them on his brother's grave. He knows he has to get there fast. Art reaches the gravesite to find Morale standing there with a bouquet of Black Cosmos in his hands. Art points his gun at the man, accusing him to be the one killing minimum holders, taking their brains out to create non-innate minimum holders and making them commit crimes. The man rejects the last part, saying that all he did was provide them with an opportunity to have power. Morale claims that he needed that forbidden minimum for the purpose of equality, to save niece's lonely soul. Art seems skeptical of the man's loneliness. Morale explains that it's because the latter could literally be referred to as a superior being, and one can get lonely at the height of excellence. The man crazily explains himself, saying if he succeeds, then Niece won't be in solitude any longer. To achieve this equality, he will turn himself into Niece's equal. Art tells him that he is going to be the one to protect that man from Morale because they are friends. This makes the professor laugh. He uses his transformation minimum and swiftly beats Art in a single go. He holds the latter down and belittles him, calling him a fool for thinking that he can protect Nice when he couldn't even see through Morale's powers. The professor pierces a sword into him. He tells Art that the meaning of Black Cosmos happens to be jealousy and despair. Just then, Niece rings up the inspector. As he tries to reach for it, Morale forcefully steps on his hand, and with a faint smile on his face, he tells Art that he made up that meaning, but then leans down to whisper something in his ear and proceeds to shoot the inspector a couple of times. The man lies there, unmoving, next to his brother's grave. Nice's call finally goes through, but Morale answers it with his transformation minimum, though it fools Nice. The professor walks away, letting his assistant, Momoka, take care of the man on the ground. Meanwhile, the Hamatoras are assigned a new job. They have to go on a business trip to Okinawa City. The duo meets their client to discuss the matter first. The man tells them about a drink called Ideal. When a person drinks a single dose, he goes into a sleep-like state and can't be woken up. The doctors claim that the drink itself shouldn't have this effect. This means that something is being added to it in some sort of special way. The client works for the Ministry of Work, Labour and Wealth and wants them to bring the person that manufactures these to him instead of the police because is his older brother. Theo and Ray also tag along for the trip. They visit the beach where they encounter a gang which tells them that those belonging to Yokohama Bain High School aren't allowed on it. Theo calls them out for their prejudice. The leader decides to settle it by inviting them to take part in an event called Explosive Triathlon. Theo accepts the challenge because they got Nice to back them up. On the other hand, Murasaki wants to find the dealer in the shopping mall, but Nice insists that he won't be there. They seek Mao's help for the correct answer. The Hamatora duo then sets up a trap. Theo becomes bait to catch these dealers. One of them falls for it. When they reach the house of the client's brother, he has taken a dose of the Ideal drink and is sound asleep. The client comes down to look at his state and is surprised to find him like that. Murasaki, however, has done a background check on the older brother. The latter dropped out of college in Tokyo after 2 years because he couldn't fit in. One thing led to another, and after failure, he returned to Okinawa. Nice goes through his computer, and sure enough, he is Morale's victim. Theo brings Nice outside to ask him for help regarding the event. Nice agrees to help after seeing bitter melon burgers on the poster. The gang has brought their own backup, aka Ratio and Birthday. Honey and 3 are also going to aid the gang, and the event is about to begin. Mao turns out to be the commentator. He explains that several sports will take place, finishing with a bitter melon battle royal. The event begins. Birthday gets disqualified for bringing a dog, aka 3, and 3 gets disqualified for being too scary. Ratio withdraws for attending the injured. The event comes down to the bitter melon battle. Nice and Murasaki have a face-off. The latter's reason for participating is that he wants to be number 1. He tells Nice that they shouldn't use their minimums in front of the spectators. Their client brings his brother along, who is dozed off still. Nice starts beating the heck out of Murasaki. The latter wants to accept the fact that he's about to lose to Nice. Their battle makes the older brother emotional as tears start cascading down his face. He finally awakens and tells his brother that he knows being happy in dreams doesn't have any meaning, Nice wins the game by smashing Murasaki's bitter melon. Later, when they are about to leave for Yokohama, nieceh stops to buy art some souvenirs. Still unaware of the fact that the man has long passed away, Morale and Momoka have prepared several beds with non-innate minimum holders, placed in a circle, with their brains sticking out. A notification for minimum holders is sent to Cafe Nowhere from the Minimum Agency Advisory regarding use of minimum abilities. Murasaki assumes that news about minimum holders is spreading. Three and Honey go down to the police station to confront who they think is Art about being dismissed from Moral's case. The man puts on a protective and caring facade, telling them that Moral is after minimum holders, which can put their lives in danger. Honey calls his gesture creepy. He tells them that he'll assign them another case later. Momoka rings up Morale to inform him that nieceh is in her flower shop. He tells her that he decided to visit the shop after seeing the reviews. He saw their advertisement on a website and mentions that their advertisement banners always appear at the right time. Nieceh explains that when a person messages in an online browser about getting married and a friend replies, that friend gets the advertisement for the shop. This way, their sales increase. Nieceh confronts her on being a programmer, but Momoka humbly says that she only knows the basics. He has already fact-checked and tells her that she is a super hacker. Murasaki asks why he paid the informer for this sort of info. Niece's reply is that he already knows the way Moral's criminal scheming is. This means he must have a hacker. Morale cautions Momoka to stay away from his place for safety measures. Back at the cafe, Koneko doesn't have a good feeling about a client and doesn't want Hamatora to take the job because it's about uncovering Three's past. However, nieceh is interested in knowing more. Meanwhile, on TV, Three's orphanage called the Poina Orphanage is shown, and his image is being ruined on the news. They refer to him as the Bloody Beast. He is also reported to be an ex-mercenary in the Middle East. A man named Masayoshi Helenly appears on the screen. He is an ex-mercenary himself, and a military commentator as well. The said main taints Three's image even further by stating that he knows him for being notorious and gains pleasure from taking the lives of others. This ultimately raises the question that should a man like this be allowed to run an orphanage? Mao informs Hamatora that the kids at the orphanage are all war orphans. Their parents are most likely killed by the so-called Bloody Beast. Ratio and Birthday disguise themselves as delivery men, easily passing through the swarm of people outside of the orphanage. They deliver fruits and honey hiding inside the box. She is angry with him about hiding the good deed. However, Three explains that he is doing it for the sake of redemption. He is raising these kids so that one day when they learn the truth, they can take their revenge on him because he was taught that retaliation isn't a sin. Honey gets mad at him for wanting to throw away his life when he had promised to protect hers for as long as she lives. Honey decides to raise the kids into great adults who won't have to think about retaliation. At night, a group of men sneak inside the orphanage. Two of them get hit by the Hamatoras. Apparently, the duo was on their way to meet Three when they saw these men sneaking inside. Honey almost gets hit by a long whip, but Three springs into action. Turns out that the military commentator is also there and has a minimum as well. He claims to be a fan of the Bloody Beast killing people and confesses that he became a mercenary after being inspired by Three, but right now the latter looks pathetic for running an orphanage for the sake of atonement. They hear the kids scream. Honey and Murasaki run upstairs to keep them safe. Nieceh, as always, figures out the situation. He explains that the overly dramatic impression of Three's past made tabloids write on the man the way he wished Three could be. Now all that remains is burning down the orphanage and blaming Three for it. Not to mention the fact the media has already gathered outside the gate. What Helenly did not take into consideration was that some third-rate journalist would come to Hamatora for extra info on Three. The commentator crazily talks about wanting to protect the image of Bloody Beast with his own hands. Three can't take it anymore and jumps at him, but the man counterattacks with his whip. Meanwhile, Murasaki effortlessly takes down the men in the kids' room. Downstairs, nieceh attacks the man by using his minimum, giving Three the opportunity to grab him by the throat, but the commentator has a trick up his sleeve. He presses a button which ignites his men's vests on fire. One of them throws it on a bed, and it catches fire. Eventually, the top floor is engulfed in flames. Three sees red. He smacks the man into a wall and starts reciting a prayer to activate his minimum. He scoops the kids and Honey in his arms and breaks through the roof of the orphanage. In the meantime, Morale releases his army in black hoodies on Yokohama, with black cosmos tucked into their front pockets. They go to their old friend groups and start murdering right in front of everyone. Momoka is also busy working on 3 computers. hacking and replying to messages about the occurrence. Morale is enjoying it all very much, whereas the Hamatora duo and Honey walk around with 3 on a leash, which is apparently supposed to make the other civilians feel safe. Suddenly people start running towards them because Takahiro has decided to make an appearance. On the TV, there is breaking news about minimum holders. It is revealed that the government and the police had already known about the existence of Facultas Academy, but had kept it a secret from the public. A whole list of past students and dropouts gets leaked as well. Takahiro is very apologetic about the day he caused all that chaos. He tells them that he is almost back to his normal self. His voice and consciousness returned a week after being locked up in prison. One of the people in black hoods had opened the prison door for him because he was releasing all the minimum holders. Takahiro wants his old body back so that he can enjoy the student's movie ticket discount. He asks Hamatora to help him out. However, nieceh declines the job opportunity and leaves. Honey wants to rent a place for the orphans, but the worker tells her that they have a no-lease agreement with minimum holders because of that leaked list. Takahiro's mother, Itu, is still out campaigning against minimum holders. Nieceh is in the crowd, listening to her. Murasaki finds him there and asks why he decided not to help Takahiro. Nieceh doesn't give him an explanation, and instead talks about Morale taking 3's trouble as a distraction to wreak havoc. Murasaki informs him that he is going to help the kid. Back at the cafe, it is decided that Hajime and Takahiro will go on a diet and exercise to achieve their desired body weight. Morale is ready to move on to the next phase. Momoko is busy creating even more traps. This time she is tracking down all the people posting slurs and harsh words against minimum holders and sending back their locations to them. Morale stares out of his window towards the sunset. He speaks about how the weak civilians think of themselves as strong individuals. In the meantime, non-innate minimum holders find them hiding behind their screens and torture them. Morale continues with his monologue as he calls their reality worthless. He stands outside, watching the chaos unfold, with batons in his hands as if he's conducting a choir. He wants to give them power if they demand it. It all turns into a riot and gets reported on the TV. Some students bully a kid after finding out that his father is a minimum holder, but Chiyu comes to his rescue with her invisibility minimum. The boys find Chiyu and the kid. She rings up the handymen for backup. Itu forcefully takes the orphans away from 3, saying that this is the right choice for their future. 3 stands there, gritting his teeth, unable to do anything because the cameras are watching his every move. The handymen find Chiyu beaten in an alley. Nice shows up at Art's office, but the man isn't there. Instead, he finds coffee and a black cosmos in there and quickly exits from there. He finds Morale on a rooftop. Nice takes him to Cafe Nowhere. Kaneko is surprised at Morale's politeness and calls him a nice man. Nice nonchalantly breaks the news to her that he is the mastermind behind the chaos unfolding in the city. Morale only smiles proudly. Hajime and Takahiro are training together. Murasaki hits a few kids, saying he was just frustrated. Back at the cafe, Morale asks how Nice had found him. The man informs him about Honey's ability, and because the coffee was still hot, he figured that Morale wasn't far away from being tracked by the mighty script. He then asks what Morale has done to Art. The man takes on the latter's appearance and tells them that he has a metamorphosis minimum which allows him to infiltrate easily into the police station and mess up the investigation. Nice wants the professor to tell him everything. The man happily explains that he refers to the required material for a minimum as due, and it can only be extracted from the brain of the original minimum holder. So far, he has made 24 acquired minimum holders out of a single one. His research is still ongoing. Nice deciphers that his goal is to turn people into non-innate minimum holders. Morale confirms it. He claims that the kids in the black hoodies causing havoc around the city isn't exactly his fault, because he only granted them power, just like how he encrypted a message in that video and provided the kids with guns. The ones who overreacted to the word gun ended up with it because they desired power. Nice realizes that the professor didn't provide all the kids with guns because he left a bunch of them for this chaos of his. Moral, with his sick morals, feels pity for delaying the kids their empowerment. His goal is to create a world where inequality doesn't exist. He asks Niece if he thinks it's unfair for some to have power while others don't. Nice agrees to it. However, Koneko angrily bursts out at Morale, telling him that the city is in shambles because of him. However, in his eyes, the people are just venting out their frustration instead of keeping it pent up inside of themselves. To Koneko's shock, Niece agrees with the man and says that after gaining power, it's totally up to them how they exercise that power and should take responsibility for it. Morale is happy to have imagined him in this exact way. Niece doesn't find it flattering. Morale is not yet done with his rambling. He says that the weak needs salvation for being weak, but the strong needs it as well, because they suffer from not having an equal. In order to get rid of this solitude, he has decided to save Niece. Upon hearing this, the latter starts to laugh like crazy. Koneko is worried that he has lost his mind. Nice turns to Morale and tells him that it's none of his business to save him. Meanwhile, Murasaki is surrounded. One of the non-innate minimum holders comes to fight him. He wants Murasaki dead because he thinks the man is taking sides. This makes the latter irritated. He frees himself, claiming that he isn't on anyone's side, then starts attacking them again. Murasaki is sick of them feeling the need to attack people just because they feel threatened. On the other hand, Niece starts to rant about how Morale has no right to tell him whether he is lonely, strong, or whatever else, though Morale wants the strong ones to get to decide things. This irritates Niece as he sarcastically asks who the heck Morale thinks he is to decide who needs power. He states his point of view that he finds those people cool who do not have power and recognize it yet still struggle. Though Morale is persistent on calling the weak ones pathetic and states that it's a goodwill gesture to give them power. Murasaki, on the other hand, refers to Niece, saying that the man gets on his nerves but he has to stick it out so that Niece can one day recognize him. Takahiro realizes that he isn't truly strong after gaining his minimum and needs to work on himself. Moral, being as cunning as ever, tells them that there is a sideshow. Just then, a tank is going to attack the Citizen Hall. Takahiro sees a flyer with his mother's face on it. Itu is running for her life as the tank arrives outside the Citizen Hall. Morale gets up to leave. Nice tries to stop him, but the man swiftly wraps a string around Koneko's head, saying that if they try anything, her head will snap. He wants Niece to wait for him a little longer because he needs to finish one last preparation to become his equal. The tank has entered Citizen Hall along with non-innate minimum holders. Itu falls on the ground and helplessly states that she did it all for the sake of the youth and the citizens. The tank is about to blow her up, but it gets attacked by Takahiro. Hajime and Murasaki join them as well. Takahiro jumps once again to save her, but this time he takes a hit from an axe. The woman is still afraid of him, but he promises to protect her and lets out a loud roar. The size of his body increases immensely. He keeps dodging their attacks and is even able to catch the shell of the tank with his bare hand and throws it back. However, his energy reduces and so does his size. One of them hits him with an axe. Nice arrives and sends him flying with a punch to the face. Ito leans over her son, thanking him and telling him that she is very proud of him. They all watch with endearment, but Morale doesn't seem to think the same. As he watches from his screen, he thinks that losing his power has caused Takahiro a lot of shame, which is why Morale decides to help him. He taps a button. Takahiro's body blasts with blood, splattering on his mother and the rest of them. They watch in shock and then the horror sets in. The boy has just been murdered. The mother cries tears of agony. Hajime starts to cry as well. Nice is fuming with anger. He yells Moral's name in pure hatred. Morale stands on a pavement with a syringe gun containing some sort of a solution. He doesn't want to make Niece wait any longer and injects it into his own neck. A youth awakens at a karaoke. Not sure how he ended up there, but sees the words "clasp your hands together" written on a paper in front of him. He does the action, and his fingernails transform into elongated claws. The clip is shown in the news, and a reporter tells the citizens that they can easily get a minimum by going to a certain location in Yokohama. People start going towards the place like a herd of sheep. They outnumber the police, and their excuse happens to be that they want these minimums for the sake of protecting themselves. Momoka watches it all from her screens. She wants the youth to not just obediently obtain it, but rather feel the awakening. On the streets, giant robots are brought out. They start firing bullets from their mouths. According to Momoka, the targets are those who cannot realize the reality of the situation, and nor do they want power. More and more keep coming. Momoka watches, anticipating for the world that Morale desires to turn into reality. With Honey's help, the handyman duo starts taking down the robots before they attack any more citizens. They stumble upon an old foe the same way they first encountered him. Birthday leaves the matter to Ratio and hurries towards the next target. Honey does the same when a few kids block their path. Meanwhile, Momoka is enjoying it all like some TV show. Gesuke bursts into her place with his men to arrest her. Morale is on a boat. Hamautra shows up after a few seconds. Nice leaves Murasaki to deal with the kids. The latter gives him a reminder to not do anything he usually wouldn't. Nice isn't interested in entertaining Morale and goes straight to the point by putting on his headphones. Morale reveals that he has acquired the forbidden minimum and is ready to show him its power. When Nice snaps his fingers to attack him, Morale teleports. He can easily move around without actually moving. Nice keeps receiving hits after hits. When Morale is done, he asks how Nice feels being looked down at. The man lies on the ground, shaking. Nice slowly gets up. He realizes that this new minimum is quite different from his own. He didn't even feel the water droplets fall, which means that it isn't super speed, but rather a teleportation minimum. Morale adds that he can use it within a 10-meter radius. He calls the power closest to being godlike because it's A-type 0 minimum. He then informs him that the boat is headed towards a radio tower, and then goes on to remind nieceh about a minimum holder named Hibiki. The guy's scream has an ultrasound frequency with which he can destroy the brains of people within a 100-meter radius. Morale has trapped him in there. They will use his ability with the help of speakers and microphones. Though his ability has weakened, it won't cause any deaths, but will cause permanent hearing loss. Momoka is being investigated by Gasuke. She has set up a mechanism with which the radio waves will activate when the boat arrives at the radio tower. Then all those who have posted anything violent will receive a call on their phones. Once answered, they will hear Hibiki's scream pierce their eardrums. Once they are truly weak, then they will want power, and Morale will gladly provide them with it. Morale then proceeds to call himself the savior of the world. He invites nieceh to turn the boat around, but on the condition that he defeats Morale first. The latter feels pity for nieceh, which is why he has decided to become a hindrance for him and wants to make him feel failure by becoming his equal. Morale then mischievously tells him that Takahiro's death must have really struck his heart. This angers nieceh, and he activates his ability, but it's no match against Type 0 minimum because Morale starts beating him again. Then he informs nieceh about forgetting to tell him that he took the life of Inspector Art. nieceh shakes with anger and tries to hit him, but to no avail. An anchor gets thrown in between them. Murasaki has arrived to aid his partner, but Morale reaches him within seconds and uses his teleportation minimum. Murasaki is unable to fight back. When Morale stops, nieceh comes running to check on his friend. The latter points out that he had already warned him not to do something he usually wouldn't, and it includes him trying to get vengeance. nieceh starts snapping his fingers but doesn't activate his ability. Morale watches in confusion. The whole thing is being covered live. Everyone that knows nieceh starts sending him supportive messages. However, nieceh gets irritated with his phone buzzing with notifications and throws it into the sea because it was disrupting his concentration. nieceh then tells Morale that he doesn't want to be a savior, which is why it wouldn't matter to him who ends up losing their hearing, because he has always used his power for his own gains. But still, he can't let Morale have his way because he despises the man. A large grin appears on Morale's face. nieceh puts on his headphones. Morale also activates teleportation, but surprisingly nieceh keeps dodging his every attack, which leaves Morale confused, and then nieceh finally manages to punch the man with so much force that Morale crashes inside the boat. Murasaki turns the boat away before it reaches the radio tower. Morale gets up from the rubble, calling it all amazing because he is fascinated with how nieceh was able to get to him. He wants to reach his level once again. However, he starts throwing up puddles of blood. Upon seeing his state, a familiar voice points out that a body cannot sustain 2 minimums. nieceh gasps upon seeing Art in the flesh. Morale accepts his defeat and calls it unfair. Art, without any hesitation, shoots him this time. nieceh is relieved and surprised at the same time to see him alive. He walks towards Morale, saying that the man had already become weak. There was no point in shooting him, and it is really unlike Art to do such a thing. The said man holds a gun to the back of his head. nieceh's eyes open wide in shock. Art tells him that he is sorry to have arrived late. After this, everything goes black and a shot is fired. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.